What's up, Raider Nation? It's your boy, and I want to let y'all know I got somebody coming in for this show, bringing in a special guest. Gonna give him a little introduction, but first, watch this.
Ooh, this is knowledge. Knowledge is power. No, it's not. Knowledge is not power. That's power. The brain is a muscle, and that's a muscle, and that's a muscle. And they are all muscles. This is all muscle. So I am covered in brains, and I have more brains than you.
All right, back with us, we have draft analyst for NBC, Roto-World's lead college football writer, Rolling Stone award winner, and also the guy who gave the Raiders a 2019 draft, the infamous F grade. Thor Nystrom, what's up, buddy?
How you been, Kenny? It's good to see you again.
Man, it's good. I'm glad to get you on, man. I know we've been going back and forth, and it's good to finally get you on. It's perfect timing, right? We got the draft coming up, and who better to talk with than the draft expert?
Absolutely. I hope the Raiders fans will accept me for this podcast after my 2019 grade.
I think that you did a pretty good job of redeeming yourself when you came on, and you kind of broke down how it happened. Obviously, it's an algorithm, and the funny thing is, I had Coach Buckner on, and he even talked about Cleveland Farrell and was like, "Hey, look, I love Clee. I think that Clee is a great player." But Clee is a product of where he was picked. And being picked at 4, you're expecting the next Khalil Mack. And what you don't get is 10 sacks. And obviously fans are going to go crazy. Fans are going to be pissed about it when you have other players that are picked before him. So I get it.
For sure. So, and for me, someone's got to, you got to give out a couple Fs, so, but,
Has to be the Raiders, right?
Well, not necessarily. I definitely got some stuff wrong about that class with them. For instance, this is way down. Because usually it's a focus on, the 3 first rounders, right? Farrell,
yeah.
Adams. Who am I forgetting?
No, it's Farrell, Jacobs, and Abram.
Oh, right. Jacob is down the line in the UDFA ranks. I didn't think they did a good job that year. They found a lot. They did a much better job. If I was to say one thing that I was wrong about with that 2019 class, they did much better in the UDFA ranks than I thought.
Yeah,
and I love Mad. I love Mad Max. Like that was.
Oh
yeah. So it's not like I hated every one of their. Yeah, he was legit. He shouldn't have fallen as deep as he did. Like we knew coming out of college, like he was disruptive. The athletic testing was there. Like that was a really good pick.
Yeah, no, I think that, as we got into the later rounds, the picks started looking a lot better, especially on paper. You found that stud with Alec Ingold later, as a UDFA. Guys,
Yep.
Nobody drafts fullbacks, and fullbacks, in the league are relatively obsolete. But, me personally, I have a soft spot for fullbacks because of, my obvious background. But, Ingold has been a beast for us, and I think that was a huge pickup. What do you think going into this draft? Obviously the Raiders have some glaring needs. They've got, they need a free safety. They need an offensive tackle. I think that we can finally stop talking about quarterback. I think the Derek Carr conversation has been put to bed.
Yeah.
But what are we looking at for first round?
So if you if it was you and you're like, okay, if we can get one position, like what would be if you had your druthers, where are you locked in on at the top?
See, for me, I'm kind of sitting there. I'm looking at best player available. I think at 17, you're sitting there, and I think that if Micah Parsons is sitting there at 17, that's the way I want to go.
That would be interesting.
That's
talk about a Raiders player in every sense of the word.
In every sense of the word, right?
A highly volatile, he's stud athlete, stud on the field, highly volatile off the field. Some a couple questions there as far as his behavior towards teammates, but as far as a perfect Raider, man. And if that kid keeps his head screwed on straight, oh my God, you're getting an absolute beast, right?
Right. But then, the question is, do the Raiders make the right choice? I think that's one of the things that we've always had the question on is, the feel is that there's always been these projects that have been taken in the first round. There's always that guy that's, quote unquote character guy there, or quote unquote good locker room guy. Obviously there's a glaring need at right tackle. Trent Brown is gone. And realistically, Trent Brown was never really part of the team. He played 16 games in 2 years. The guy I was looking at was Tevin Jenkins if they go at 17. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So, I was curious to get your take because from the outside looking in, I would have said tackle and secondary, if it was like the top 2, but obviously, where they're sitting, one of those guys who is more talented than their slot could absolutely fall. And Parsons is a really good example, as far as that goes. But if I was like, with them, like, one of these two position groups, I want someone to fall to me, it'd be in there, not safety, even though they have the need there, because there's no one that's going to be worth it at that pick. But whether it's the tackle or the cornerback, you're sitting in a good spot because each of those classes has 3 studs at the top. And with corner, you could even amend it to 4. I got Nystrom just slightly behind Farley, but I think no one's going to bat an eye if Nystrom goes around there. So you basically have 7 guys. And Jenkins, if you put him in there, it becomes 8, because Jenkins is also my tackle 4. But it's like, you go Sewell, Slater, Darisaw, and then, Jenkins after that. And then with the corner, obviously, like, it's Surtain, Horn, Farley, and Newsom. And so, like, me, I'm not sure what they would do, but for me, it would be like, my initial thought would be like, I want one of these 6 to 8 players in that sort of grouping, but I will keep the flexibility open that if one of these mega studs that should not get to 17, right, I'm not going to lock myself in. If some effing beast comes down, like, we might be ringing him up and just say, screw that. Well, on day 2, which by the way, Mayock go, like, I have disagreed strongly with his early, with specifically his first round picks, which is why, he got dinged in my grading, whatever. But after that, he has done very, very well in the middle rounds. And he's done really good in the UDFA ranks too, in his 2 years. He has like this thing of like, in the first round, it's not that, like, it's not necessarily, I mean, it is reaching like, a couple of those picks, like the perception of it, but like Mayock is, if nothing else, he trusts his read. He's like a guy that's going to go down on his own sword. And with his evaluations, those are his evaluations, right? Like he follows them through no matter what. And so like that's where you get some of the interesting first round picks. But the interesting part of it is like the manifestation of it is, typically, I mean, this is just the first 2 drafts, but like, he would be getting dogged on like, Friday afternoon, the day after the round 1, and people, whatever. But then like, after that, if you looked at like, the Kuiper big board, best available as you're going, or like anything like that, like it seemed like he was, hitting the guys that, industry consensus, whatever, from there on out was just picking off guys that were falling down the board. Max Crosby's a great example. He should have gone 40 picks, 50 picks above where he did, maybe, especially at hindsight. But like, trusting the read, doing the work. It's going to be interesting in the first round this year if those guys that he falls in love with, that he is higher on than the industry. In the past couple of years, he's just been like, F it, this is my dude, taking him right here. It's going to be interesting if going forward in that, especially in that first round, if in instances like that, because I don't have any problem with someone falling in love with a kid, but like, will he be more sort of fluid, within the, in terms of trading, the machinations of it, of like, the slot, whatever. But as far as this one, I don't think they have to move at all. I mean, like both of those positions, again, it could fall outside of that. But if you're looking tackle, corner, you have at least 6 guys that everyone agrees is a stud and would absolutely be a good value there. And then you have the 2 other ones that would be fine as well, right? Like if all those guys are off the board. So I think they're sitting in a good spot as far as what this year's draft offers in the middle of the first round at the couple biggest positions of need that they have.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with this draft, obviously this is a weird year. I mean, going into a second COVID year draft, we didn't have a combine this year. Yep. Very little tape. We're kind of going off of what we saw, in the past. A lot of guys are going off of what we saw this year. How do you think this draft is going to differ from drafts of the past?
That's a very good question. So what I think is, and to your, I mean, it's a great point, which is it's not just that you didn't have the combine, which is huge, right? Because the combine, it's the same measuring sticks, the same stopwatches, whatever for every guy. And, in the past years, we'd always be like, these schools are lying about their pro day results, but that's all we have for that this year. That was the combine, was the
a lot of 4.3 guys this year.
A lot of 4.3 guys, a lot of 4.3 guys, especially like if you just trusted like the Exos times, earlier when they came out with the Exos combine, and like, it was like Oprah was throwing out the 4.3s. You get a 4.3, you get a 4, you get a 40 vert, it's like stuff like that. So like you have that. And then you also have the thing that you also mentioned, which is, as far as like what prospects give to the most important thing that prospects offer to the NFL during this sort of job application process that is the pre-draft process is their last year of tape. Their athletic profile would be, 1 or 2 notches below that. The tape starts the day, right? And then you fill it in after that with the athletic stuff. Did that confirm or deny the stuff I was seeing? The outfields, all the different stuff, right? You start to put it in after that. This year, we have less final season tape of the prospects than literally any year in the history of the NFL draft. Because of course we do, right? Like, because, there was all the opt-outs and then it wasn't just all the guys that opted out. You also had truncated seasons on almost every single team, right? Like even, for instance, like Greg Newsome, the guy I was mentioning, like, jumped up from probably heading into the season. He probably would have been 7th round pick, something like that, 6, 7, something like that. And he was seen by the industry as a late 3rd round pick, even going into his pro day. And a part of the reason for that, even though now he's looked at as, this guy going in the middle of the 1st round, is like the couple seasons before he didn't do the best. And his jump up was during 6 games during this fall, where luckily enough for him, he didn't have to play anyone. When he got Ohio State, he got injured right away in that game, and Olave wasn't played anyway. And then he missed the game where they played Auburn, where he could have gotten Seth Williams or Schwartz. During the regular season, he faced no one. It was David Bell basically, who's a solid receiver at Purdue, but when Rondell Moore was active, he was sort of the secondary guy. But point being is like, in case specific situations like that, you have a guy who struggled his first 2 seasons and then over 6 games dominated, but really wasn't facing anyone. And in his case, you saw the manifestation of it again, where like, if you go to Benjamin Robinson's Grinding the Mock website, you could sort of see like, it's sort of like stock tickers, so it's like, January, this is where he was being, over, 1,200 mocks. This is where, sort of aggregate was. And then in February and with Newsome, you could see it's like, after the season, he's gotten up to like the very late 3rd round, like he was like 100th overall. And then after that pro day, he just jumps up, because in his case, all he had to do was essentially answer the athletic stuff, and evaluators were going to forgive him for some of the previous stuff, even with that context of 2020 sort of nebulous, because he was shutting people down, but they weren't, you know what I mean? Like, and so, but like, that's just one example. There's a billion examples like that. Yeah. And so, you just go back to that example, the Newsome one, it's like the extrapolation or the projection, right? It's like each individual person's prerogative when they're looking at Newsome, the less quantify, the less data you have on each one of these guys, the more projection is required. Right, because it's like you're at like the eye doctor. They're put like where they make it blurry, whatever. The less blurry it gets, the more information you got of the kid, right? So you see him clear, which is how you can get homogeneous projections from all the different people, when they're evaluating the kids. But again, in instances like this where there's less data, we're all seeing some of these kids with beer goggles. And at that point, you start to guess a little bit. And so that was a really long-winded way to answer your question of saying, I think the manifestation of this is, again, non-homogenized boards around the league. People are going to see the things different. And so I think, number one, that's going to make things more unpredictable on draft day. And I'm not talking about like, necessarily in terms of trades, those might happen too. But what I'm talking about is like surprises in the moment as far as where players are going in the slots. I think you're going to see more of that, because it's like, it's like 2 people looking at the beer gog and they have to see something, far up. They're going to see it in different ways. Right. And so like, I would say that's the big thing. I think you're going to see different stuff like that. And what's going to be interesting is like the offshoot of that, like we were talking about Parsons before, and there's a couple of different examples. That's a 1st round example, but you think of like this down the board, circumstantially things can go against a player, as the draft is going, that can have them go down a little bit. They can fall into alleys, and stuff like that, where position, the teams don't need that position. But also the thing with, these teams see everyone different. I think you could definitely see some guys go well above where you think they might go, otherwise, guys can go in, and then the opposite.
Yeah, it's going to be really weird. And, you look at this draft, right? You look at kind of, some of the moves have been made. Obviously, the Niners traded up to get to 3. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about Mac Jones being that 3rd pick. I think it's a smokescreen.
Well, am I allowed to swear on this, Kitty?
Oh, you can swear. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fucking bullshit. Yeah.
I mean, but you look at it like the top 3 picks, you're probably gonna have a quarterback go off the board. Sam Darnold got traded. And so this draft is gonna be it's a very quarterback heavy draft too. I don't see any absolute studs out there. I mean, obviously there's Trevor Lawrence and there's Justin Fields, and those are probably 2 biggest names in the draft, but there's no absolute studs. There's no guys where you're like, I need to have this guy, I have to have this guy, I want to have this guy. This is, going to be the future. Outside of those 2 guys, what does that do for this draft? I mean, obviously there's some needs. There's a lot of new head coaches, a lot of new GMs. How does this all play into the drafting process?
Yeah, that's a really good sort of side point to what we were just talking about, because the quarterback movement I mean, you got to just think back in the past, like the quarterback movement of the draft itself heavily informs where the other positions are going as well, right? Because like that's the most important one, obviously. And so, different stuff flowers off of that, or the manifestation of the board is different because you have the quarterbacks getting elevated up the board a bit, and everything sort of slots around that. This year, we just talked about how wonky it is circumstantially, with the pandemic, everything like that, and how it affected this specific draft class. The other thing that's going on, so you have that, what we just talked about, but the other thing that you have, it's a 2-pronged thing where, number one, the quarterback movement of the starters in the league this offseason, at the rumors that we're not happy with our guy, we want to get an upgrade, all this sort of stuff, was more than we've seen in the past couple of years as far as the NFL goes. You mentioned the Darnold trade, the Jared Goff Stafford blockbuster to sort of kick us off, and like different sort of stuff like that. Then you had the, obviously, every year, teams have the needs or whatever, but this goes in conjunction with the quarterback class where you have 5 guys that everyone agrees is a first-round pick. I might disagree on Mac Jones, but in theory, you go with me on that one. But like those 5 guys are going to go in the top 15 in some order. You mentioned we're guaranteed to have 3 off the board at the start. It's going to go Lawrence, Wilson. I think it's going to be Fields now, maybe, but San Francisco's doing a good job at the poker table right now, keeping us off of that. But, that's how it's going to start. And then, again, all the movement with the quarterbacks going in. And then right now it's sort of like the Atlanta Falcons are on the clock, right? And they have to decide, like, this must be a fascinating organizational thing outside of even the prospects itself, because they basically get to do. Did you ever read the Choose Your Own Adventure books as a kid, where you got maybe the 2 options, and you go to page 68 or go to whatever? That's them with this pick, because like they can either be like, we're better, that we have more talent than people thought we did, last season, or on board right now. If we get Kyle Pitts, who maybe Megatron meets Tony Gonzalez, I mean, like, dude, may just be an absolute, he might be the best of all time at his position, really. Absolutely could be. He has gifts for that position that we haven't seen before. If you want to just be like, YOLO, F it, like, I'm the new coach, like, I'm coming in, I want like the, one of the sleekest offensive weapons that I've ever seen, like on the, outside, whatever. You could do that. The other thing, of course, you could do is like, pick the project guy, and Trey Lance would make a lot of sense for them because they consider him for a year with Ryan. And then, of course, the other thing is like bailing out of that pick. But it's all that decision itself of like the, for instance, trading out, or the take, especially the quarterback, sort of kicking the can on immediate needs against the Pitts thing. It's such a drastically different short-term decision that will obviously have long-term repercussion, offshoots either way. So that's a really interesting one. And again, they start the draft, and then after that, it's going to get really, really fascinating.
Yeah. Kyle Pitts I haven't seen a prospect like that come out. I mean, he's probably the most killer tight end out of Florida since, well, I mean, we won't talk about that.
I don't know if you meant to set that one up, but that one really got me. That was a good one.
Kind of lobbed it right up there.
Oh man, that was a good one. I didn't even see it coming. That was a good one.
A lot of people don't.
I was going to make a joke that I'm going to stay away from. No.
It's a family show.
It's a family show. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's for sure. And I mean, again, like almost basically ever, right? Like,
yeah.
I was a kid when Vernon Davis and Gonzalez came out, so I wasn't like doing this. You have to go back to there to even get a totem for Kyle Pitts. But even then, I don't think it works 1-to-1, like, because he's got different stuff that Vernon Davis, like I watched Vernon Davis a little bit. Again, I was a kid back then, but like I did see him. I was obsessed with the draft back then too. And Gonzalez a little bit hazier. I don't know that I remember him in college, but like Pitts, again, you're seeing something totally different. And Raiders fans, you have somewhat of a feel for this because Waller is, I mean, like that's the only current guy that you can even try to do if you're going, if you're going tight end with him. But Pitts is even better. Right. Like, and Waller, like, cause Waller, when he was coming out, was like, he had all the traits and he was like, coming out of the option thing and stuff like that. It was like, it was all wonky, but it's like, man, if he gets his personal life on, whatever. And like, maybe we get him we figure out what position he's going to play. He could blow up. Whereas Pitts he's already got that stuff. He's already proven it, et cetera, et cetera. To me, he's more like, whether you want to say like rich man's version of Waller, or whether you want to say, I mean, for me, it's more like, I think of him more as just like Megatron light. And then sure, you add blocking stuff in space, and the ability to move him around. But like, as far as a receiver and as far as like what you're getting downfield, it's basically the same thing, like 94% across the board. Right. It's like very similar dimensions, very similar wingspan. The athleticism is just south of that neighborhood, et cetera. So fascinating player, fascinating process. He's going to be a fun one. NFL fans are going to love that kid.
Very he'll be a first round fantasy pick for sure. I think
for sure
you could look at him going off the board, top 10 easily. But I mean, so
as soon as 4 potentially. Yeah.
It'd be really interesting. I mean, I think that Matt Ryan obviously has a couple years under his, he's got a couple years left. See what the franchise wants to do. They want to roll with Matt and give him an opportunity to try to get back into the Super Bowl. You're sitting, I think with the Falcons, they're kind of sitting in a position where they have an opportunity. You've got the Buccaneers in that division, but then you also have the Panthers and you have the Saints, and the Saints are going through a whole quarterback change. You've got the Panthers that are going through a whole quarterback change, and the Buccaneers are bringing back 22 starters from that Super Bowl team. And I'm sorry, but as long as you have Tom Brady on a team, it's very hard to bet against them. But I think that looking at that division, the Falcons can be a big turnaround.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah. And like, can you imagine being Matt Ryan during this draft and you're sitting there like the 4th pick is on, it's on the board and Goodell's about to come out and you're like, you mother effers, I did so much for you. You better take Kyle Pitts. You better. Like, I mean, like just for Ryan, you either get like, one of the most ridiculous athletes, the pass catching athletes that we've ever seen, or else they're going to take your backup next season, the kid that started 15 times in the FCS, Trey Lance or whatever. Like, again, fascinating decision for the organization itself. And then, Matt Ryan certainly got a lot of vested interest in that. They could go one of these 2 different ways. And they're a team that's done a really good job of again, a team of keeping us off their scent. So sort of like the 49ers, although it seems like it really does seem like the 49ers, some of the guys high up, I don't know if Lynch or whoever, but like that they used some of the high end media contacts they had to disseminate this Mac Jones thing that in the moment it appeared like it was sort of BS, but then you almost had to start to believe it. The more of like the Adam Schefter came out and reported, oh, Mac Jones is going number 3. And it's like, really, Schefter? Like, I just like, I don't see him as a, and then like Peter King, and then you started to see like, Mel Kiper's mock and Daniel Jeremiah's mock, and like one after the other. And eventually it's like, okay, but then like in the past, like 72 hours, this is like Thursday night, or, something like that. The odds of it, for the 3rd slot, where Mac Jones had been, initially he wasn't even really, whatever. But when the 49ers made that trade, and then in the aftermath with all the rumors, Mac Jones had he went up to -150, then he got over -200. And then earlier last week, he'd gotten as high up as a little bit over -300. Like at some books, he was like -3, 315, 320. And then the Justin Fields pro day happened, which was it on Wednesday, Kenny? I think it was,
I believe it was
his second
Wednesday.
one. The one that they went to,
the one that Schefter tweeted about just randomly.
Yeah, famously, like the first pro day that Justin Fields had, it was a scheduled conflict with Alabama's, and Shanahan and Lynch decided to go to Alabama's to watch Mac Jones, and so that started a lot of this stuff. But then, Jones did this second throwing session. And anyway, they were there, obviously. There was no other precipitating event that would have caused the odds on Thursday to shift as drastically as they did, outside of, people knowing stuff or whatever. But basically what happened was, again, like Jones was like, he got up as high as close to -325. I wasn't that's the last time I'd seen it. And then I think it was on Thursday, it switched all the way to now Justin Fields was like -150 or -175, and Mac Jones had fallen to like by, plus 250 in like a matter of 24 hours. Again, no injury, no, John Lynch didn't come out and say, we're going to take Justin Fields, whatever. It just, but as far as market indicators go, looking at Vegas and the odds that they're putting out, they know more than the media does, because they don't care if you lie to them, like they're, right. Whatever. And so it looks like it's going to be Justin Fields, that third pick. But I thought that was pretty fascinating, because for Adam Schefter to report something like that, it has to be someone very, very high up that Schefter thinks he's taking to the bank. And so Adam Schefter was lied to by either Lynch or Shanahan. Maybe a third guy Schefter would have made a report.
I tell you what, it's probably Parag Marathe. He's been the source of the leaks ever since he was with the organization.
Oh, interesting.
He's that guy. He was behind all the Kaepernick leaks, everything like that. So I would put my money on Parag.
At least in this case, I think that I think they were brilliant. Ted Wynn from The Athletic, he had a very interesting theory about this, that the more I thought about it, I was like, that actually might be true. Where, you heard all the rumors coming out right after that they were moving up from Mac Jones, that was the thought or whatever. And, again, surprising. And Ted Wynn's idea was that, Robert Saleh, who's now with the Jets, who was with the Niners last year, they're in the second slot. And Ted Wynn's theory was that at that time, they at least knew from Saleh that, like, it wasn't a done deal one way or the other. Like maybe they were, we're fielding Darnold offers, and if we get one that's acceptable-ish, that we like enough, we'll take it, because then we can do the Wilson thing. But well, we like some of these other guys too, et cetera. And so, so maybe we should keep Darnold, and hell, maybe we should take Kyle Pitts at the second pick, or something like that. Ted Wynn's theory was that, San Francisco knew that at least the decision wasn't done, or that, that was the indication that they got. And so they put out the Mac Jones smoke screens, thinking that there was at least a shot that Zach Wilson could fall to 3, and only they knew it. Right. And so you're disincentivizing teams for potentially figuring that out and trading up to the second slot, right, to hop you for someone. It actually makes sense, because again, in hindsight, someone very high up that Adam Schefter trusted lied to his face and embarrassed Adam Schefter. And Adam Schefter is an American institution. So that's, yeah, anyway, it's very interesting.
I've got my qualms about Schefty. He's a Broncos guy. So, I've got my feelings about Schefty, but no, I mean, he generally doesn't miss. That's one thing with Schefter is he generally doesn't miss. And, I think that if they don't go Mac Jones, then, he'll sit there with egg on his face for about 5 minutes, and he'll bounce back and report something crazy, and, he gets back to it. Thor, sure. I want to get into some fun things now. I know that you're a KU guy, and yes, you were there around the same time. I was actually out in Kansas. I went to Benedictine for a hot minute. I got there.
I should have had you up to Lawrence. I wish I would have known, Kenny. We could have had so much fun back there.
I actually came to Lawrence.
Oh man!
So I came. So my
can you imagine you and me back in 2004?
Yeah, it would be nuts. So my best friend, my high school quarterback, actually played at KU.
Oh,
Brian Luke.
I actually do think yeah.
So he was
aware of the name at least.
Yeah, he was slated to be a starter, and then Mangini came in and switched the whole system to the option, and Barman started. And so
Adam Barman. Yeah.
And so Brian's pure pocket quarterback, 6'4", 230, big guy, can't move to save his life. I still give him a hard time. But yeah, so we came up there one weekend. It was the Nebraska game. And I think they actually won that game. They beat Nebraska, I believe, that year.
We were good when I was an undergrad.
Yeah, no, you guys were solid. I think you guys went to the bowl game.
Won the Orange Bowl in 2008. Yeah, so Aqib Talib was on that team. For people that don't know, Chris Harris, there are some, NFL guys, like long-term guys that were on that team. But like Kenny's mentioning, Mangino sort of fetishized these like super duper small white quarterbacks. And so it was like, the quarterback on that team was Todd Reese. He was like 5'10". The quarterback before was like Bill Whittemore, who's like 5'9". And then the kid you're mentioning is all sort of the same ilk. But like, Mangino's a very good coach and very good in recruiting. He could identify these guys under the radar. Like Aqib Talib, people don't know this. He's only a 3-star recruit. And Chris Harris, it was either 2 or 0. I forget. But like, very good job of like identifying these guys. But yeah, in the Orange Bowl that year, KU makes the Orange Bowl hilariously over Missouri, who would beat them in the regular season, which was just fabulous. And then go to the Orange Bowl and beat Virginia Tech. So it's very fun.
Yeah. And then obviously Talib and Harris go on to win the Super Bowl together and form the Legion of Boom with Wade Phillips, who I had on my show last week. And we talked about that, the infamous chain snatching game with Michael Crabtree. But yeah, so Kansas, so KU, back to that. So when I went out there, we went to this bar, and I don't even remember the name of the bar. You could tell me the name. I couldn't remember to save my life. The only place that I remember the name out, there's two places I remember the name out in Lawrence. You got Yellow Sub, which is freaking amazing.
Yep.
And the Bada Bing, which, like I said, it's a family show, so I won't talk about the Bada Bing too much. But if you're a Sopranos fan, you know what the Bada Bing is.
Yeah, you do.
But tell people kind of about the Lawrence experience, because then I think that everybody thinks that the Kansas is all wheat fields and country boys, and Lawrence is completely different.
Yeah, it is when you go the other way of Kansas. Like, it's like, it's Kansas City, Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas. And then like Lawrence is like 40 minutes away. Right. But if you drive past Lawrence and keep going the other way, that's where you get into that sort of stuff. But as far as Lawrence, like it's sort of a utopia in a state that, otherwise is maybe a little bit behind, but like it's sort of like with in some ways like with and I don't mean to alienate anyone listening from any of these states. I'm not meaning to shit on your state, but like it's sort of like Austin with Texas, right? Like in some ways, in terms of ideology, and both that, and then also just an absolutely beautiful city. Lawrence is, like, the rest of it, like Kenny's saying of Kansas, it's like the rolling fields and the wheat and all that shit, but in Lawrence it's like this campus that's up on a hill, the Campanile. It's very, the topography, especially for Kansas, is like, it's effing beautiful. It's a little bit different in terms of that. And then, the traditions and everything there, as far as the other stuff, but like the town itself is really cool too, and it's sort of like segmented, like campus is here. And then, within a mile is Mass Street, where like a lot of the damage is done by undergrads. It's like the line of bars. If you've seen Kansas winning the title, like afterwards, where they do like the shots of the street in Lawrence, where people are like climbing on the lights and like with their shirt on, the cop cars, whatever, like that's all on Mass Street. So it's like it's a really good place to go to school, because it's like it's a bigger school, but like not, I didn't feel like prohibitively so. But then you also had like this really cool town around it. And then of course the reason I went there was because I wanted to go to a place that had D1 sports. I mean, like I wanted to go to an FBS school. I was most certainly not being recruited as an athlete, but like my thought was, I'm going into journalism. I want to do work during undergrad that could potentially leave campus. Other people could see it, might help me at the start. And so that's why I picked to go to Kansas. And luckily enough for me, my senior year, we won both the Orange Bowl and the national title in basketball in 2008. Very cool.
Yeah, super cool. And I mean, I'm kind of the same way. I wanted to go to a school that was nationally recognized. That's why I left. I mean, one of the reasons why I left Benedictine and transferred over to Temple. I mean, you can't beat Philly. I mean, you tell me Philly over Atchison any day, right? And so
must have been a bit of a culture shock, Kenny, going from one to the other.
Bro, I'm from Oakland, so Philly is, I compare Philly to Oakland a lot. I think it's really similar. You've got your bad parts, you got your good parts, you've got your pretty parts, you have the campus, which is gorgeous, and then right outside of campus, you're walking right into the middle of the hood. We lived right on Broad Street. Our frat house was right on the corner of campus, and it was a place where a lot of people don't want to walk late at night. Me personally, I thrived. I loved it out there. But I thought it was a great experience, the whole college experience. I think that a lot of people, they miss out on that college experience because they stay close to home and they want to do local school and do that thing. But going away somewhere is huge.
It is. I totally agree with that. And especially like you think now, like with the COVID stuff, like you see like, it's all like, what do you call it? Distance learning, with some of these schools and enforced. So, right. Like, like when we were in undergrad, the idea of online classes was just starting, right? Like, like the first time I saw that it was possible, I was like, wait, you they'll give you a credit. You get a grade. You don't have to be in the classroom. I was like, all about this. But like now it's, that's just sort of, in this era of COVID that, it's become a thing. And like, I did think about that, because there was like the thing of like, there was a couple different schools where like, I don't know if it's hard. I mean, like even higher up, academic type schools where the kids were like, why are we going to pay you full tuition price? Why are you extorting us for full tuition price when you won't allow us in the classrooms or you won't allow us on campus? We can't even do the things that college kids are in, like the outsides, like the social stuff. It was all gone. It's like, no, stay at home. That would totally change the college experience, right? Like, in terms of like, that the social aspect, and then like, again, going to a big school, like, that's just what I want to do for those reasons, like the future career reasons and the social thing. And then of course the academic stuff, whatever, but like going, having a college experience for 4 years where you were like very rarely around other people and you're just sort of like sitting inside. It's like, that's an idea that appeals more to me now that I'm really lazy, but like at that age, it wouldn't have flown. I would have been real bad. I would have been real mad about it.
Yeah. Could you imagine was it Zoom happy hours and Zoom power hours instead of going out to the bars in college?
At that age, I would have been like, no, I'm not doing this. But like now it's like, wait, I don't have to go to the bar and I can still get drunk. And it's like, I can still see my buddies.
Sit on Zoom.
Exactly. The mindset just totally changes in that decade afterwards. Yeah.
Completely changes. Nowadays, I'm like, I don't want to leave the house now, but now I'm at the point where I want to leave the house. Like we were talking about, I just got vaccinated. I'm ready. I saw that the Raiders are expecting full fans in the stadiums. I'm excited about that. Blue Wire, we're opening up a studio over in the Wynn. That's going to be huge.
Ooh,
yeah.
I didn't know about that, Kenny.
Yeah, Blue Wire is opening a studio in the Wynn. Supposed to open this summer.
Dude, that's sick.
Yeah, it can be right there in the lobby. So we're going to be out there, doing that. I'm really excited about that. Obviously, I'll be in Vegas a lot, with
Kenny, does that mean the next thing we do together, it would be in person? You can get me out there, baby.
I mean, you might have to talk to Cody. He's the money guy.
Okay.
He's the guy that brings in all the big bucks. I'm just
Cody Money Mayweather
face. Yeah, but no, that'd be great. Love to do something out there. But Thor, what you got going on? Where can people find you? What do you have going on? I know that you have a lot of draft talk going on. Where can people find you?
So you can find me at NBC Sports Edge. Recently changed. I didn't want to correct you at the start. We recently changed the name for Roto World, like in the past like month or so, or month and a half. Because I always have to, when people ask me to introduce myself, I always have to remember like, oh, it's NBC Sports Edge now. But like, even if you type in Roto World, it still brings you to the same URL. It doesn't matter. Nothing's changed. But like, so like their scouting reports are at this point nearly over. I'm working on the last one, which is safeties. So I'll have safeties out early this week, like a deep dive into the position, whatever. And then day or two, I think it's Thursday. I would have to check the schedule, but my favorite column of the year to put out every year, which doesn't actually even have any words. It's just my 500 player big board, right? That's just like with 500 comps, player comps. So I have like, the RAS score in there and, the dimension, but like, and then like 500 comps, whatever. So that's what's coming this week. I might have a mock draft. I think I have a mock draft too this week. And then of course we're heading into draft season. You can also see, check me out on say hi on Twitter at Thor Ku, THORKU, which yes, that is from Lawrence.
And if you guys don't follow Thor, make sure you do. And Thor is an excellent user of GIFs. I call them GIFs. Some people call them GIFs.
Yeah.
But Thor is an excellent.
I call them GIFs too.
GIFs. Yeah, I think it's spelled GIFs. So I'm going to go off the spelling.
Exactly.
But he's an excellent user of GIFs. So he's fun to engage with. He's fun to talk to. That's actually how we started this whole friendship. Is we started going back and forth. You gave us an F on our draft, and I had some things. The funny thing is, I wanted to be on that pod that night, and Cody and Chris kept me off. And I was a little sad about that because I had a lot to say to you, Thor. But then I heard your pod, and I had to take back everything I wanted to say.
But I was excited because like at the end of it, it was like the thing, and then it was like you had like 5 minutes where you were just like, where you were like talking about it, like addressing me in some ways. It was like,
yeah.
But I didn't hear that in advance, so like that was for me, that was the most fascinating part, was like getting to that part, like because I wanted to talk to you too, and then I was like, oh, Kenny's about to bury me. This is gonna like I was like all scared, like. But anyway, I'm happy to go on, anything and like discuss my opinion, but like, and you guys are like, have told me like, it's cool I came on, but like, the other way around is like, having someone like that on, from like your and Cody's perspective and like hearing them out, and actually having a conversation as opposed to just like, trying to cater to your audience by like, cutting my knees out, or whatever, like it was cool. Right. Like, so like, it was sort of like, Spider-Man gif, like, real, recognized real or whatever. Like, I just, I appreciate it. You guys are cool dudes. Like, love talking to you guys.
No doubt, man. Well, I look forward to talking to you again. And I know that, hopefully we can talk after the draft and you give us a better grade this year.
I'll try.
I'm telling you, if we take Micah Parsons at 17, there better be an A on there right there. I'm telling you right now.
Well, I know that Mayock's going to do well in the later rounds and in the UDFAs. So as long as he does good in the first round, by my methodology, he's probably gonna have a really good pick.
Before I let you go, I have one more question. Speaking of later rounds, Mike Mayock picks. Tanner Muse, thoughts?
Yeah. Well, so it's funny because I was writing about this, my safety column, sort of not about Tanner Muse, but about the idea of chess pieces. Because I was writing about what was the safety yesterday? Oh, it was the kid from Florida State, right? Like, and I'm talking about like, we don't know if he's going to be a chess piece or if he's going to fall slightly below that. And if he falls slightly below that, he's going to wash out of the NFL quickly. But if he becomes a chess piece, whatever. But like what I was talking about is like the value of those players in play, sort of being able to leverage every situation on the field, like in the way like the way that you used to use your bench in the NFL or, in some other sports, it was just like that guy would be injury insurance or he would come in to rest the starter, right? Whereas the thing that these chess piece players have done is in a play in play out basis, you can maximize matchups by moving them. So that's one offshoot. So right. So like, Isaiah Simmons, for instance, you think about is like, he playing back at safety or, playing linebacker. Now he's going to move into the slot because we don't have our slot corner is 5'10", and he runs a 4.55 and, he's shifty. He can do the small guys, but when it's like a big guy in the slot, now we can move him in there, or one of these other different guys. And at Clemson, what was really interesting was you had that, but they also had Muse that did that, where it was like, he was like the safety that was linebacker size, but it didn't, the position didn't matter, right? Like both of those guys, we talked about it with Simmons, but in a quieter sense, Muse was doing some of those different things too. He couldn't play as many positions for sure, but like when you're talking about the moving around thing, and so you have that where you can again maximize the matchups. But the other cool thing that you can do as far as bench usage off of when you have players like that is like instead of using it where you're not considering the circumstances where that bench player is entering, you can basically you can start to weaponize your bench. Like there will be college more is probably a better example, but like you'll have kids that aren't starters because they're good at one thing, but the other thing they're just not there yet, right? So like you think of like for instance, like an undersized linebacker who's like a redshirt freshman and he can stay with people in coverage, but he cannot hold up in the run. Well, anyway, those kind of guys, you can use them when the chess piece guys moving around, those guys can come in off the bench just specifically for the usage, right? So like, we're not putting that guy, the small linebacker in against the run, but during the pass, depending on where so anyway, basically what happens is like you can use your bench in these very specific ways where it becomes a platoon more like baseball, where it's like specific to the situation, right? So not sometimes I think people miss this, where it's not just the match, the chess piece guy, that's like you get the matchup. It allows you to weaponize various other things too. So your defense becomes more like a transformer, where like, or I suppose if it was like Bruce Lee, it's like water, it's like extremely fluid and stuff like that. Anyway, as far as Muse, like he's not on, of course, the level of Simmons or, different stuff like that. But like when we talk about versatility, this is why it's not a cliche. Like it is a mineable resource, right? Like because of those things. It's not just that they could theoretically start in a base at either one. It's that during the game, for smart coaching staffs, they can weaponize them not only matchup wise, but also start to, again, the platoon sort of a thing with the bench, where we get them in on, whatever. And so it was fun to going back to Muse. It was fun watching him in college because they would move around Simmons or whatever, but then he'd go around with them, and then they would do all these different replacer blitzes at Clemson. Venables did, where like you'd send guys from various spots, and then because you had these chess piece types that, like, for instance, Muse, off ball, great, safety stuff, totally fine. Like he was actually a little bit better in coverage than people, especially in the off ball stuff. Deep was a little bit different thing, but again, you could send someone from one spot, and invariably at a different position, you would have someone that could also play his position. So he'd sprint back, take his spot, and it starts to really confuse the quarterback as well. You're getting different looks. People are right off the snap running into places that they were not in before. It just screws with all that sort of stuff. That's why this is, again, a long-winded way to respond. I really like versatile players. I like versatile players that can do multiple things that are smart. What I saw with that kid coming out was when they had him deep, he got singed a few times. But when they had him at off-ball linebacker, he was really good in coverage. Right. And I knew, from beforehand that, as far as the run, as far as toughness, as far as like, tackling acumen, that you could like trust, he had those things going on. And so it's like with a player, like, it's versatile, but then it's also like, okay, we can line graph it. Like these are the situations where we don't want him in, or we don't want him in, whatever. And then these other things we can mix and match it like that. I like him a lot again, because it's like you had safety traits, but there was the one thing he couldn't do, which is like in coverage, you deep, you wouldn't trust him to protect the back end. Right. But like, again, everything else, you have these different skills. Not only is that cool for him, but that allows the coaching staff to do these other cool things as far as matchups go. That was another one of those picks where I'm talking like that Mayock has made a lot in the mid to late rounds that I really, really liked. I thought that was a clever one, just as far as both the skill set there, but what it allows the coaching staff to do in the game, like real decisions in the game, a guy that you can move around for matchups.
So you think that it was more of a I know that they talked about him having some issues in camp with trying to get an idea of the system, and obviously we've heard Will Compton say things about Gunther's system and how he would throw different things. So you think it was more of a system thing, or do you think it's more of the player?
Yeah, so that's interesting. I didn't know that. I would say, like, I would be surprised if Muse had a difficult time picking up the system, because he absolutely was fluent in probably the most complex defensive system in college. And he was one of the two guys that was moving all the time. So like, as far as responsibility and as far as, just sort of picking that up, I would be surprised if it was a mental thing, in terms of that. But what, you do have to say in his defense is at Clemson, it was, again, it was moving into all these different spots. He played a lot of, safety. He played a lot in the box. I think he played a bit in the slot as well. And they may have even sent him off the edge a bit, these different things, when players aren't allowed to sort of focus on one thing, that's where you can see like some of these sort of like, how would you say, like micro level skills, that are specific to the position that other guys have like pounded. Like, for instance, if you watch either Patrick Surtain tape from this class or Elijah Molden, those are guys that, just like Antoine Winfield last year, had dads that played quarterback in the NFL for 10 plus years and were studs. Each one of those kids, when you watch them, you will notice that, first of all, they're always in the right position, stuff like that. But even as far as their granular movements, they so rarely waste movement. Right? Like making the wrong step one way or cutting, whatever. Like there are things where physically they have the limitation, but, as far as the mental side, it's not just the know-how and stuff like that. It's within the play. You can't get a half. It's not going to be their F up that gives you the half step. You have to earn every single thing. And so those guys were like, they had the education from like effed birth, like out of the crib that they were being taught. And a kid like we're talking about with Muse is, he has, it's like the joke they make about journalists where it's like, everyone else working knows a lot about a little, and journalists know a little about a lot. And that's, in this case, that's sort of like Muse, where it's like, can do all these different things, but for very specific things. That's probably where I would assume, I wasn't aware, but like where the frustration would come in is like, okay, now we want you doing this, but like he hadn't done it as much. Right. Yeah. I just think like a player like that, those things, if, because this was the risk factor going in, right? Even though I liked him as far as a guy that I thought should move up to off ball, like going forward, because he was so good in that role at Clemson when they put him there. But like, that's where the risk comes in. It's like, we haven't seen him there a lot. Like, can he, in certain, situations, he flashed, of course, and he was good overall in coverage, etc. Love him coming downhill, a tough kid, hits hard. But it's like, every single thing, not only has he not done the movements as much, not only has he not studied as much on tape, but like in the moment, those things haven't become muscle memory yet, right? Because you've been playing all these other positions. He's a kid though that I would keep trying with, because again, like any of those guys that become, even to the low end of what you would consider like a versatile move piece in the NFL, if you can get there, the other ancillary things that it allows you to do, even outside of that player, again, it's a play, a situation in plays. The different things it allows you to do in terms of like Swiss Army knife, we're going to do these different things with other players, as well. The value of it's so real, right? And then of course, Muse is going to give you stuff on special teams as well. And so there's things, and case specific things on the field. So there's things during his development where, until we see what he becomes with that, could he be a low end chess PC kind of guy? Until we figure that out, there's things he can do for you in the interim. But I'm certainly pulling for the kid for sure.
Yeah, I had to ask because, obviously Raider Nation gets a little fired up about picks that don't play even when they're a later round pick. They're very quick to criticize on picks. And obviously Cleveland Farrell has already been labeled a bust, even though he's been highly productive.
And that's dumb too. Even though I didn't like the pick, it's dumb to call him a bust. Like,
you can't call a guy a bust after 2 years.
And what you said about, I forgot if you said Wade Phillips said this or Buckner said this, but like it was so perfect about, basically what you said that he said was like, it's not Clellan's fault we took him at the 4th pick.
Right.
Like he's going to be a good starter, like for a really long time. It's just like, but what you said was like, if you take a guy at 4, you're expecting him to be Khalil Mack, and he was never going to be, right. So some of those things it's just out of his control, but he's a good player, right?
I agree. I'm a big fan of Farrell, but I really appreciate you coming on. Appreciate your time. I can't wait to have you on again after the draft, talk about what went down, what transpired, and I hope to see you out in Vegas, man.
Oh, dude, I'd love it all. I'm in for both. Pleasure to talk with you as always, Kenny. Really enjoyed it.